Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So last week we were able to build a functional ISO server, but in today's video we're going to be building the ISO client. The ISO client is the one responsible for communicating with the ISO server to get requests, to make a request and get a response depending on the functionality that the user is performing. In our case, the user is trying to pay for some grocery item, so the ISO client is going to be doing a balance inquiry on the ISO server to ascertain that the user has enough balance within their account to be able to pay for those particular items. This is what we're going to be building today, and we're going to be doing an end-to-end test to see how these two systems interconnect and how they work together. How about we dive right in, guys? So just as the server, we also have the Beam ISO 8583.net library, and this is also a console application, um, which starts its entry point from the main. Okay, so what I try to mimic here is basically um, a system that keeps running on a loop um, basis. I don't want it to just exit on one transaction. All right. So all of these are just basically aesthetics. All right. So I've hard coded a particular product amount, and I'm trying to obviously get to know if the customer will try to proceed. That's what I'm doing here. Terminating if customer is not going to proceed. If the customer is going to proceed, I've gone ahead to try to get the customer's account number, and I'm basically validating the account number to be 11. All of these are just demo validations and demo implementation. All right. The idea is just to have this particular client connect, see how this client is able to connect to our server, our ISO server. All right. So this is where we're trying to do the check. Now we already know the customer's account number, and we already know the product amount. So we're trying to check if this customer can make this particular transaction, right? And this check is going to be, let's go into this method to see how this check works. All right, so what we do is we build our ISO data elements. All right, just so to be able to build our message, we build our data element first. So with this specification given to us, we know the request that is needed on our ISO to be able to build, to be able to make a balance inquiry request. All right, all of the requests is basically given to us here as the mandatory fields. So we'll just go ahead and fill in all of those requests in their data element specific positions. You must not miss it, because the other guy on the other side of the um, um, server is checking for those specific fields, and these are the standard fields, so there's no reason why you should miss it. All right, so all of them has been built, wired into the data element, and then I use the same ISO library to build the ISO message. So I just log the ISO message over here, then I sent the ISO message to our server making the request. So let's see how that works. So we're doing the same thing over here. We're trying to create a socket. You need to create a socket. All right. Don't forget, the socket is the endpoint, the two-way tunnel that allows for that connection to happen. So you need to create a socket. And to create a socket, obviously, I've repeated it more than 1,000 times now. You need your IP address, you need your protocol type, and you need your port. So the same is what we're trying to do over here. All right. Having done that, we connected our to our server successfully and sent the message over to our server. All right. So we sent the message over to our server from here, and then we wait to receive a response from our server. So we receive the response from our server, and we try to encode because obviously it's going to come back stream back in bytes. So we try to convert to string, and on converting to string, obviously you're going to get an ISO message. All right, you're going to get an ISO message, and on converting to string, responded with the ISO string. All right, so that's what this method does. So we just responded with the ISO string. All right, so let's go back to the method that called this guy. All right, so that's what this response is. So this response ought to be the ISO message that is coming back from the server. You remember our unpack, right? So we just unpack so as to get the data elements. All right, now from the data elements, we can basically do our check. The first thing I did was to get the account balance of the customer. Then I'm using the response, obviously, because I know that the response is going to be at index 39. I'm using the response to check if this customer is actually able to make this transaction or not. If it's able to make this transaction, it's going to return successful, which means true. Otherwise, it's going to return false. All right, so that's what I'm returning for this guy. So now let's go back to where this was called, and then we check this. If this was false, we return insufficient funds to complete this transaction. But if it's true, we make the transaction happen. We will make debiting the customer using this thread or slip, and we do transaction was successful. So I'm just going to run this client as well. I'm going to run this client as well, just so to show us how both of them are working. And I'm going to put the server side by side with the client. Don't forget that our server is here waiting to receive a request. All right, and this is our ISO client. All right, so our ISO client is saying the Apple Watch Ultra I want to buy is $900. Do we want to continue? We say yes, we want to continue. Now it says enter account number, so I'm just going to be entering a random account number, making sure it's up to 11. All right, so see this beautiful thing that just happened. So what happened was immediately this happened, I entered the account number, the request was sent. All right, so look at what was received on the server. All right, this was received on the server. All right, and the server processed the request. The customer balance, account balance was 950, and that was what this guy returned back to this server. It was 950, and then it says customer is eligible for purpose for purchase, debited customer, and transaction was successful, terminated transaction, and now it's asking for asking obviously because we did a repeated loop. All right, so one last thing, I'm going to set a breakpoint. So let's start by setting the breakpoint on the server. Let's set a breakpoint on the server. Right. So let's set the breakpoints here. So let's set the breakpoints here. And then where's our client? This is our client. So let's try to make another transaction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, connected. Let's see our okay, waiting for new connection. So you'll see that our server has received the connection. Now check the incoming request. Now you can see the ISO message. All right, that's the request that came from our client. Now if we go down, it unpacked the request, and on unpacking the request, what we have is our data elements. Now you can see all of the elements all fixed within their individual position. All right, so that's basically how it works, all fixed within their individual position. All right, so what we basically did was to pick out the account number. We know where the account number is. Now you can see the account number that I entered over here. Now the amount was 900, and that's the amount of the products the customer is trying to buy, and that's the amount that we're trying to check if the customer has such amount in his account. All right, so let's go ahead. So we pick the message type. The message type is O200. We pick the message type, and we go directly to get the customer's bank account. Now, from here, we see that the customer has about $1,000 in his bank account. So definitely the customer is eligible, successful, right? So we get that successful. We build our ISO response. Now you can see our ISO response. All right, you can see our ISO response over here, and this is what we send back to this is what we send back to the client. Now let's check the client. Now you can see the client over here. Yeah, this is the client. This is the client. All right. So this is the message we sent back to the client. And you can see that this message contains all of the information needed. The customer account balance was 1,000. All right. So obviously, customer is eligible to do this. All right. So yeah, it's just the way it works. It is very beautiful to build. I would strongly advise that you play around it. It can be a little bit um, daunting, but I would advise that you just play around it and try to also watch the other videos so you can basically understand how the pieces fit and connect together. All right. So, guys, we've come to the end of this particular section. Um, I know it can be it can be pretty daunting, but using the first principles, once you break all of these things down into their tiny pieces and try to understand them from their tiniest piece, it would become very easy to tie everything all together. All right. So that's why I advise that if you've not checked out all of the previous videos, I would advise that you check them out, starting from the beginning down to the message type indicators, the data elements, the bitmap. Try to check them out and then come back to building this yourself. And firstly, just trying to walk through the code that you would get in my GitHub repository. So I hope this whole thing was helpful, and this is where we're actually going to be capping up all things ISO. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. If it was helpful, please hit the like button, and please do well to subscribe if you have not subscribed. All right, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.